Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am joined by Ian Conroy to deliver to you 1 hour of Celtic chat. Ian, we're in the midst of the pre-season. We're 2 weeks away from our first competitive game against Kilmarnock. We'll be raising the flag as the league champions. And tomorrow night we come up against, would you say, a superpower in modern day? Maybe they are, in Manchester City over in America. How are you feeling? How are you feeling about recruitment? How are you feeling about the inactivity? Is it going from frustration to anger? Where are you,
Ian? I think it's not as far down the line as I'd like it to be. I think I can speak for most fans when we'd all like to have had the players that we want in the door and all sort of having a full pre-season under the belt. That never seems to be the case with Celtic. But there's little tidbits of stuff happening. Obviously, the signing of Schmeichel and Sinisalo was good, so I was pleased to see that. And obviously, if the paper's to be believed, Ida is kind of edging closer towards a move, so I hope that happens. The guy's name from was it Belgium, sorry, his name escapes me. The winger, he looks. I saw some footage online of him, and he looks all right. And apparently Brendan Rodgers has made a personal sort of approach to him and spoken to him, so that could be good. And this American player as well, who sounds like a superhero, I've forgotten his name as well. Combative kind of midfielder. Is he kind of potentially going to be a replacement for Matt O'Reilly, or is there someone who's going to sort of complement that midfield armoury? But I'm not as despondent as I have been in the past. So a bit more positive than in previous weeks. So hopefully it bears some fruit and we get these guys in the door, and we have at least a couple of weeks before we face Kilmarnock.
The name Balakwasha is the player. The name keeps popping up. Apparently his middle name's Ange. I don't know if they're doing that to rub salt in the wounds. He's one that keeps popping up. And I've always been the same, right? Even when we were linked, I remember thinking right back to one of the tabloids mocking up. This was probably, they would have had some kind of system, but it certainly wasn't Photoshop. And they mocked up a picture of Rivaldo in a Celtic strip. And I remember looking on the back page of the newspaper and just laughing, Ian, because I was like at that stage where even with the Celtic jersey on, I'm not convinced. That takes me back to 1989. I need to make sure the club have announced the signing. I'm not even convinced of that sometimes. So all these names are swimming around, and it's quite clear to me that we're in a state of flux when it comes to transfers, because on the one hand, we don't want to make the same mistakes that we made last summer. But on the other hand, we need to have done better, in my view, at this stage with 2 weeks to go. And people are saying, don't panic. But it's about bedding players in, Ian. It's about, looking at a guy even like Nicholas Kuhn. I'll be proved, right, wrong, or otherwise as the season progresses. But he's the guy that I'm saying, I think we could maybe get a player out of him from last season. And I thought he looked pretty sharp in the games and the action that I've seen of him so far in pre-season. Not a massive challenge yet. Hopefully he starts against Man City. But it's taken him, if he does perform well, Ian, it's taken him 6 months to get to that stage. This is my point. Now, not every player's an Adam Ida who hits the ground running, makes that immediate impact. So we're bringing players in just now. We might not see the best of them until the turn of the year. And I think that's a bit of a concern as well, particularly with the Champions League games coming up.
Yeah, and that's the chance you take, isn't it, when you're not getting the kind of the oven-ready player. Add Joseph to that list as well, in terms of, with Ida, he hit the ground running straight away. Does that mean that it's slightly less, is it slightly more inferior player to these guys, or is it just the fact that, I don't know, they just, we're all human and we all take different times to adjust to new surroundings and things like that? I don't know. But yeah, it is a concern in terms of, we need that instant impact. We need that. We need players to, it's not an insignificant amount of money that they're coming in for as well. It's a good few million pounds that have been spent across the board with these different players, So you'd expect some kind of quicker return, really. I noted against Charlotte, I watched the most of the game actually. Kuhn looked decent, but he still looks a bit lightweight to me, and he looks, his sort of decision making still is slightly off. So we can't really put that down to him adjusting now. He's been here, like you say, he's been here 6 months now. He's turned up a notch, which is good, but there's still some more levels to go. So we need to try and get Brent to coax that out of him.
No, without a doubt. And I think that when I've seen his kind of body movement and his physical stature, he does put me in mind of wee Paddy Roberts. You know, it's transfer window madness, so I'm allowed to mention Paddy Roberts, right? And Kieran Tierney and all these kind of guys. I'm not saying go out and sign Paddy, but he reminded me, just he had that kind of, the way that he floated around the pitch. He's not been anywhere near the impact player that Paddy Roberts was. I thought he was a fantastic player, not for the entirety of his Celtic career. He was hampered by injuries. Now, I'm going to take you back, Ian, and I'm going to take you back to the 23rd of July, 1995. Now, what do you think about when you go back to that kind of summer? I'm thinking it was just Britpop mania. It was Oasis versus Blur. It was all that kind of stuff, wasn't it? And I'm not sure if you got entangled or that, or you were caught up in it, Ian. I know you're a music fan, but that was really the summer of Britpop, wasn't it? 95.
It was, yeah. Was that the summer we signed? From Bolton. Big Alan. Stubbsy, aye.
Stubbsy. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. I remember reading that, you know, it was kind of like, there was I remember there's a guy I worked with, actually. I did a summer job at the Child Benefit Centre, and there's this guy who was obviously banging into Oasis, and he had his hair cut like this, like Liam would know, you know. He was a Sunderland fan, and I remember one day he'd shaved his head because he was sick of getting stick for copying them. And I saw him at the match, right, and then the day after, Liam Gallagher shaved his head.
So I remember that.
So he was guy. So this guy shaved his head first because he was sick of getting stick. But yeah, so I was working at the Child Benefit Centre, and I remember reading the news that they were after Stubbsy, and then we ended up getting him. You know, but that was kind of the last. Was that the last times really? No, I suppose Martin O'Neill was the last times we were signing players from the English Premier League on parity with, you know, I think Arsenal and other teams were in for him, weren't they?
Arsenal, yeah. I mean, that's genuine. That was a genuine signing whereby Arsenal did want to sign the player. And I remember when he signed at the time, Bolton had a contingent. There is a point to this, by the way, anyone who's wondering. But, you know, these deviations take us down the route of Liam Gallagher shaving his head. That was front page news in 1995.
Wonderbold.
Ah, that's right. Aye, all that kind of stuff, right? So Alan Stubbs had left a team in Bolton, and he had played with Alan Thompson, who was later to sign for Celtic, but he'd also played with big Celtic fans. Owen Coyle, who never got a chance to play in the hoops. John McGinley, massive Celtic fan, never got a chance to play in the hoops. But he also played with Andy Walker, Stevie Fulton. He played with Chick Charnley. Charnley went down to Bolton for a spell. And there was an interview with John McGinley at the time that Stubbsy signed for Celtic. I remember the news. My uncle Chick, painter and decorator, if you're tuning in, Chick Cameron took me to my first Celtic game in 1987. And at the time that Stubbsy signed, just jumping back to 95, this is how you found out about it, right? If it wasn't in the paper, it was on the radio, it was on the 6 o'clock news that night. And Chick was doing a job in my estate, in my scheme, and he's run over and chapped the door. We've signed Stubbsy. And at the time, I think it was like £3.5 million. It was a big statement of intent. Now, the reason we're bringing that up, and the Times and Oasis and all the rest of it, is because on that date, 1995, on this day in 1995, Celtic played a friendly game, and it was against a team called Kickers Emden, who beat us 2-0, as it happens. And something very special happened on that particular day. And I'm going to have a look to see if I can find the Celtic lineup in actual fact, because it will be an interesting one. And this might refresh and jog your memory, right? So the Celtic side that day, if my eyes are working, was Pat Bonner, Lee Martin, you remember him? Tosh McKinley, Malky Mackay, Tony Mowbray, asterisk, Peter Grant, Brian McLaughlin, Wee Eddie, Rudy Vata, Pierre Van Hooijdonk, Andy Walker, John Collins. Now on the bench, we had Willie Faulkner, Gordon Marshall, Simon Donnelly, Mark McNally, and the dearly departed Stuart Gray. Why am I mentioning that game? Ian, any idea? What was the significance of that? A friendly game in Germany. Well, Tony Mowbray decided that day that he would get the team together before kick-off and do the huddle. And it was the first time Celtic ever did it. and it's now embedded in the fabric of the club, isn't it, Ian?
Of course it is, aye.
And Mowbray was Mowbray. I remember us signing him, right, going back to expensive centre halves. We paid £1 million for him. He was a stalwart at Middlesbrough, testimonial against Celtic, whilst a Celtic player for Middlesbrough. And I don't think he hit the heights that a £1 million player back then would be expected to hit. But we took him to our hearts, Ian. And it was because of his kind of approach to the game, full-blooded individual, but also because he lost his wife, his young wife, Bernadette.
Yeah.
And obviously at that time he was at Celtic, and he just wanted to get the team together, a togetherness. And he did it that day, and we still do it all these years later. I love that folklore and that element of this football club. I find it very, very important, and it can never change. We always need to do the huddle.
No, of course. I think I remember actually Mowbray. I lived in the northeast for a time, and a lot of my stepfamily are Sunderland fans, so I used to go and watch Sunderland a lot. And obviously Middles was just down the road, so I saw Middles play a few times, and Mowbray always stood out. I actually went to his testimonial as well. So that was it 1-1, I think it was, and a bit of bother as well. I think
there was a bit of bother. Yeah, that's right.
Aye.
Did you start it? Was it you?
It wasn't me, no. I was having a day off. So I was about, I think, 15, 16 at the time. But yeah, it was it's sort of bygone days as well. I think it's kind of things have changed so much, and I think that kind of that sort of the younger generation. I sound like an old man Mo here, but that kind of everything seems so kind of I suppose sanitized and robotic. That earthy kind of organic, soulfulness that is kind of gone. I think from society, but certainly from football. So would a player, I suppose a player would maybe sort of create something like the huddle if it was for Instagram or something, or for the cameras rather than actually for the fans and for the team themselves, So that's kind of, I suppose, my take on it. But no, it's the huddle must always be done. It's a modern classic, isn't it?
Well, you're right. It wasn't contrived. It wasn't for the socials. It wasn't for any of that stuff. It was for the genuine reason that Moga gave, that he wanted the togetherness at a football club. And it's so important. I agree with you. It's part and parcel. I mean, I've had people over to Scotland in the past, Ian, whereby they wanted to do that Celtic thing. I get it. It's a tourist thing and all the rest of it. But if someone asks you, could I do that? And you can organise it and get a couple of tickets, and then you take them down the Gallagate and you do the whole thing. You do the stadium tour, you show them the shot. Once you get into the stadium, they want to see all the stuff that is basically a folklore around the world, right? They want to see the huddle. They want to see the fans doing the huddle. They want to see you singing "You'll Never Walk Alone," and you're trying to explain them, listen, it's a Sunday game against Hearts. We're probably not going to sing it, But they want to see all these things, and it's a bucket list thing. It's a tourist thing. But the huddle is now part of that. I'm really keen to hear your thoughts, because look at the tagline: frustration is growing with each passing day of transfer inactivity. That tagline is probably my own feeling at this time, but it's also based on the messages we get on the socials. It's based on the comments that we get on the YouTube channel. People are growing increasingly frustrated. And the minute anyone backs the board in any way, shape or form, they're getting called a cheerleader and all this kind of stuff. So let's just have a discussion about it. Let's have a discussion about it and see where we are and where your feelings are in relation to the fact that we've got 2 weeks to our first game. Are you pretty calm about it? Because I watched an interview yesterday with Brendan Rodgers and he seems pretty calm. What does he know that we don't? And that's maybe why he's relaxed about it. Jungle Lion, as happens many, many times, and every time I bring your name up first, I say everybody tells me that you're my favourite. Jungle Lion. Anyway, 29 years ago today, Tony Mowbray started the huddle. We'll probably need to do something for the 30th anniversary, some kind of worldwide huddle. Who knows how that'll work. But the reason I brought you up, Jungle Lion, I noticed on the socials last night you were trying to get me an interview with Paul McGrath. Paul McGrath. I would love to interview Paul McGrath. Paul McGrath's autobiography is without doubt the best football book I have ever read. Yeah, it's not formulaic. It's the guy should never ever have been a footballer because what he had to go through to become a footballer, Ian. And then when he hit the peak of his powers because of his demons, You know, it's incredible that he continued to be a footballer at that level, and he's come through all of that. And one thing in his book was that he mentions the opportunity to sign for Celtic. And then I read another book from another manager who mentioned that he tried to sign Paul McGrath for Celtic. So two managers, Billy McNeill and Liam Brady, both tried to sign Paul McGrath at different times for Celtic. And I just remember, I think at one point, if Billy McNeill had signed him, Ian, he would have been playing alongside Paul Elliott. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
That'd have been like the best partnership of all time. Paul Elliott and Paul McGrath. Incredible. So hopefully Jungle Lion gets us an interview. I'll fly to Dublin. I'll do it in your man cave, Jungle Lion. I'll do it in there. I've seen it on the socials. I will interview Paul McGrath anyway. What a player he was, Ian.
He was amazing. He was amazing. And I read his autobiography as well. It starts off, doesn't it, when he's kind of he's sort of alcoholic blackout. He's in the back of a police van.
Yeah.
So it smashes you straight away, and it's again getting back to, I suppose, that kind of modern times compared to times then. It's just really honest, and he lays himself bare, you know, and not for effect. He's just really sort of warts and all, in his autobiography. But what a talent! What an absolute talent! And you know, even when he went to Villa, you know, arguably was the sort of best period of his career, you know, at Villa, and obviously the 1990 World Cup and 94 World Cup, sorry. You know, just an absolute machine. And imagine that, like you say, you know, him and Paul Elliott. I mean, we didn't see Paul Elliott for too long, but again, another Rolls Royce, you know, two Rolls Royces together. I love a bit of that.
It would have been unbelievable. Listen, this is fantasy football, and I don't mind reminiscing about guys like Paul McGrath. Stephen Sloan, welcome back to the show. I hope you're well, mate. It's always great to see you popping up on the YouTube. Transfer window has been open for 40 days, and we still haven't bought an outfield player. Tomorrow, Paddy McGill will be on the show. He will tell us how many days there is to go before the first Champions League game. I think it was 66 last Wednesday. Is Adam Ida the only striker out there? Is Bernardo the only midfielder out there? It's embarrassing. Right, I'm going to take that point that you've made, Stephen. Very well made. And am I going to be the devil's advocate? Am I going to be the cheerleader here? Are we at a point, Ian, where we're so confident that both those deals are going to go ahead that we're concentrating on they two for those two positions? Now, by the way, we need to be doing some work on the left back, the left central defender, the winger. I get all that, right? And any replacements that we might have to bring in as well, if we do indeed sell Matt O'Reilly. But are we confident enough? Is that maybe why there's no panic? We're not looking at elsewhere? Because I've said before, and I'll continue to say it until we get it right, Celtic should have a long list and a short list of players for every single position at any given time. If you're Brendan Rodgers, Ian, you should be able to push that button to your head of recruitment, who, you know, it'll ring out at the moment, and the head of recruitment will bring through or send over every single possibility we've got. Left back, at, you know, maximum age 23, maximum wage X amount. This is how much I want to pay for them, and here's the criteria. We're talking physicality, we're talking passing, defensive duels, etc., all the different criteria. And this is the type of player. And then you're presented with a dozen of them. And then you say, you know what, we've not really had much success buying players from Argentina, so remove they two from the list, and then take it from there. Then you're liaising with your scouting team, and then it comes down to 2 or 3 players, and the manager ultimately makes a decision at that stage. I mean, surely we're somewhere close to having that kind of system in place here. We can't just have all our eggs in one basket unless we know we're going to get the player either. You know, it's just the case. I wasn't too excited about what the Norwich manager said about him last week when he played in the friendly. Any manager would say the same. It's all BS. Gordon Strachan said it when he got interviewed. It's all smoke and mirrors, right? If Celtic want Ida, Celtic will get him. They've just got to pay enough money to get him. The Bernardo one seems like we're haggling. Yeah. But are we just confident we're going to get him, Ian? Is that the reason why we're not being linked to other strikers so much or other midfield players?
Possibly. It might be the fact that we're so cunning behind the scenes that we've kept it under wraps. And that did happen actually last time Brendan was here. We kept a lot of stuff under wraps, so the press didn't really get a hold of certain things. I seem to recall anyway, unless that's a Mandela memory. But in terms of the scouting department, scouting network, I agree with you. I think we should be in that status. But I think if I'm Brendan, I have to consider what's going on sort of previously in this tenure. I want to be cherry picking that team. I don't trust the people, the powers that be, to go and cherry pick and hire professionals that are going to go out and scout for me, and I'm going to trust their judgment, because we've had too many misses. So as long as if I'm sitting in Brendan Rodgers' chair and I get the sort of the free rein to go and bring in a recruitment team and get that up and running, then I'd start to trust it, But I think in the meantime, maybe Brendan's just making sure that we're going and identifying players that he knows or has some kind of awareness of, or the people that he's brought in have a level of knowledge about these players. I think with Ida, obviously if he wants to join, if he wants to come, he's got to just make it known. But we're Celtic and we're haggling over money. Look how offended a lot of us are with Atalanta's bids, or the reported bids for Matt O'Reilly. It's a slap in the face. It's insulting, considering the value that we and the attachment we have towards him and what he's done for Celtic. But we're doing the same to other teams, so we can't really have it both ways. We did it with Miovski last season, by all accounts, but we're doing it. We're kind of, we're chancing our arms, so we can't have it both ways. But seeing that interview the other day, was it today or yesterday? Brendan looks really relaxed. Whether it's just that kind of American sunshine. If he's flying my plane, I'm happy, because he just exudes that confidence. So and that when he flashes that grin, it just gives you that little bit of shot in the arm. So I think we probably are pretty far down the line with the two of them. But I've not seen much of the conversation. I know you and JP talked about it the other day a little bit. It's French Eddie. If we didn't get it, here's a question actually for everyone really. If it was a straight choice between getting French Eddie back and Ida, if Ida was kind of tentative, what would you go for? Because I was thinking about this myself and I thought, geez, I'd love to have both of them. I'm greedy, but
good question. Good question.
To the guys on the chat, who would you go for? Would you go for French Eddie or would you go for Ida?
Right, let us know your thoughts in the comment section. I don't know how we would possibly do a deal for Edouard because of the wages he's on. However, there are other ways that you can structure deals to get a player in. We know that Brendan Rodgers is a massive fan. It was him that brought him to the club first time round, and he came in on loan, of course. And for me, yes, the COVID season apart, even though he scored 20 goals that season, I thought he was sensational young player. And when you look at the teams who were interested in him pre-COVID, I know that he went down south. It didn't really work out for him at Crystal Palace. However, I think that he was affected by the dropping value of assets and the interest. If you look at Ayer, for example, Ayer was getting interest from AC Milan. He ends up going down south and to a club who, personally, I don't think are in the same stratosphere. And then you looked at Ryan Christie, who's been linked to Sampdoria. Similarly, he goes down to Bournemouth. Ayer goes to Brentford. Edouard was wanted by several clubs all over the globe. He ends up going down to Palace. Would I have him back in a heartbeat? But I'm also a massive fan of Adam Ida. I think technically, Odsonne Edouard is a better player. But, if you're sitting at nothing each in a cup final, and you've got the two of them on the bench to come on and make an impact, who are you bringing on? And this is the thing. I mean, I've seen Edouard doing it against Hearts. You know what I mean? Not coming off the subs bench, but making the difference in the Scottish Cup final. I've seen Ida doing it against Rangers. Sensational players, the pair of them. And a great question, Ian. Let us know in the comment section and why. Who would you go for if you had a straight decision to make? Odsonne Edouard, Adam Ida. Who'd you go for and why? Here we go. Sean G. Eddie all day, every day, and twice on a Sunday. Now, we got 14 million quid for Edouard, right? We signed him for 9. We got 14 for him. Crystal Palace, how much are they going to be looking for, do you think? You're probably looking at 10 million quid for a player like Edouard, even though he's a fringe player that they want rid of.
I'd say so, yeah. Yeah, but like you say, the wages, but it could be structured with an up front, But I mean, it left a little bit of a sour taste when the way he left. He down tools a little bit. It seemed like he did, but he was back for the Player of the Year awards, wasn't he?
He was.
And he's still a noted fan. as is Dembele as well. I don't think that. I mean, I'd had to take Dembele back as well. He's out to pasture, isn't he? But it didn't end well with him and Brendan, didn't it? So they had a bit of a fallout. But I mean, yeah, I'm all for getting all the old band back together.
And JP and I have already devised the announcement video for the socials where Edouard goes into a record shop in Glasgow and he's flicking through the records, and it's the second coming that he picks this time. Green Lichty, Edouard was slopey shouldered when the heat was on. So it's a nope from the Green Lichty. We've also got Ida over Lazy Eddie all day long. I like Martin Nicol. Just get the two of them. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, why not? Why not? Young and hungry, it's got to be Ida and Donny Tiny Hands. Go for French Eddie, although it would cost a lot. It would cost a lot. Again, we're spoken about us being conditioned as fans, Ian, into thinking, oh, you know, it's going to cost too much and all this kind of stuff. There definitely is an overcautious nature to the Celtic board when it comes to that. And when we do decide to splash big, i.e., when we were going for the 10, we did spend a fair bit of cash. I think we've scared ourselves into doing it. It's almost as if, right, that happened then, that will happen again. That's not the case. You can pick up a goalkeeper and Kasper Schmeichel for free. You can pick up Joe Hart for £1 million. You can pick up Matt O'Reilly for 1.5, and they can all be successes. And then the flip side of that is you can buy a player for £5 million or Novroshki for £4.3 million. And, you know, it doesn't work out for them. It's just football. There's no exact science. Otherwise, everybody would buy the programme and everybody would be doing the same thing, Ian. So from time to time, I think we're too risk averse. And sometimes you just want them to push the boat out that little bit. I mean, why not buy two strikers? It probably isn't going to be Ida and Edouard, but I think we probably need two anyway, Ian, to be honest.
I agree. And it's like, you know, to be bold, it's like look at Scotland's performance in the Euros, and it's like we didn't go there and add any value. You know, and you look at like Georgia, who went for it, and they sort of advanced. You know, there's no point in sort of having all this at your disposal. You know, look at the platform that Celtic have got. Look at the size of the club. Look at what we are. If we are, and I don't think we should, you know, be gung ho and just, you know, sort of gamble the family silverware. But there has to be a balance struck, you know, and by being risk averse, we're falling short. And that's all these project players that have not cut the mustard, really. You know, if we put that money together, you know, I said I've said that blog I did, and it's like, you know, we could have, you know, cumulatively put all that money together. We could have signed Harry Kane and got U2 to play his announcement. You know, we literally could have. With all these sort of £2.5–3 million players over the many number of years, and that's been risk averse, and it's fallen down the wrong side. But again, of course, we get the Jotas and we get the Carter Vickers, and these were gems, you know, that we sort of polished up, but they're not always. It's not always going to happen that way. So I wish. I mean, I read that article that Dermot Desmond did for The Athletic. I think it was back in 2020, and it was quite refreshing because obviously they're quite rare, these interviews that he does, and it was quite an eye opener. It's quite refreshing that he's on the money, and it got me thinking about: do we need a little spell of adversity for him to actually, you know, I suppose, you know, start to do radical things? And it was that article which said that he tried to get Alex Ferguson as manager in 1997 to stop the 10 in a row for Rangers, you know. And it's like, so he's got that in his. He's a billionaire, you know. I don't know about an eccentric billionaire, but he's certainly a bolshy billionaire when prodded and pushed. So I don't want to have any sort of period of adversity, but would that naturally then make him sort of get his finger out, spend a bit of money, and that knock-on effect would mean that we did all right in Europe?
Well, I'm going to speak about that because in terms of reactions to the landscape, it's one of these things that we've heard the stories in the past of Ronnie Dyler's Celtic side getting knocked out by a championship club in the Scottish Cup in the semi-final, and Rangers, and the behaviour of the directors sparking something in Desmond, you know, to go out and get Brendan Rodgers in the door and kind of change direction a wee bit. And if that is the case, I'm just thinking to myself, why does it take that to give you the spark? You should have that spark every single day of your life as the major shareholder of Celtic Football Club. We talk every single day for an hour live, and we'll probably talk for another couple of hours to your mates and on the socials and on WhatsApp and everything every single day. And why do we do it? It's not because we're spoiled brats and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, we demand the absolute best for our football club because we know what it means to so many people, Ian, and we know that we're capable of so much more. I've spoken to people who are incredibly successful business people who are not involved with Celtic, who come up with some incredible ideas as CEOs of companies that Celtic don't even consider. I mean, here's the thing for you, right? See, about 4 or 5 days ago, I was having a look at a Celtic State of Mind's performance on YouTube. Now, we're going through a period in the pre-season here, Ian, where there's not a great deal happening. You know, we're playing bounce games against Ayr United in Queen's Park. We've, at that point, signed one goalie. The Kasper Schmeichel thing had not been announced yet. Yet on YouTube, a Celtic State of Mind had had more views in the previous 28 days than Celtic's official channel. Now, I'm not saying that to blart it as Acsom. I'm saying that because that should never happen in a million years. Celtic should have the best in class in every single facet of the football club, from the major shareholder right down to the person in the car park who tells you where to park your car, who, by the way, their guys are brilliant. And Celtic, I've got to say, they're probably the best in their class. But there's other departments and there's other areas of this football club that you think to yourself, you know, we could do so much better. And that's an example. And by the way, thank you every single one of you for tuning in to make that a wee feather in our cap, because it was great and surprising in equal measures to find that out. Now, talking about Edwards and Ida, Jungle Lion, you're back in. You're organising an interview with Paul McGrath, and if you get it, you can be my agent. Both make a statement. Absolutely, make a statement. I think we're going to need 2 strikers anyway. Franny Weldon, Edward, Alan Robertson. Eddie's temperament and attitude is questionable. Ida for me. I can see it leaning towards Ida. Plunge McNugget says neither. If that's the case, Plunge, who do we go for? We definitely need to bring strikers into the football club. Jonathan Brown, Ida, 100%. And I would take Miovski over Eddie. There is not much love in the comment section today for Odsonne Edouard. Ida says, smell the glove. French Eddie has had his spell. There was a striker, George McCluskey. George McCluskey obviously played in the famous game when 10 men won the league back in 1979, and we spoke to Murdo MacLeod about that last week. It was aired on Friday night, and this week I'm going to let the cat out the bag. I'm going to tell you who we've got. Tomorrow we will be joined at Barra's Art and Design by the one and the only Peter Grant. Peter the Pointer. I mention his name and it brings a smile to Ian's face. He will be the special guest this week, and that will go out on Friday night. I love Peter Grant. He was part of that team. I was always a Celtic fan, Ian, because you know how it is. You're growing up, they're there, they're omnipresent, right? They're your football team because your dad supports them, and your uncles and your cousins, and everybody supports them, right? And it's generational and it's passed down, and you have no choice in the matter. But I remember that when I truly fell in love with Celtic, and it was a centenary season. So Peter Grant, for me, he's up there. He's on a pedestal for me because he's part of that iconic side, the centenary team. And I don't think, as a player and as a servant to Celtic, he gets enough credit. I mean, he was unbelievable. The amount of service he gave to Celtic Football Club was unreal. And again, through the dark days as well. And it's just a shame for me that in that season you were talking about, 97, 98, when Wim Jansen comes into the football club, Peter Grant's still there, by the way.
Yeah.
And Wim Jansen offered him a 1-year extension on his contract. But by that time, he knew he would be a fringe player. He wasn't, going to... Wim Jansen had plans. We went on, we signed Craig Burley, we signed Paul Lambert. He wasn't going to be a first pick, Ian. And he decided at his age, just the wrong side of 30, it was time to move on. But I wish he'd have stayed and got a wee bit of success. No one deserved it more than the likes of Tommy Burns and Paul McStay and Peter Grant. And it was a shame that he left in the season that we actually did stop the 10.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Peter Grant, again, the centenary team is... we're the same on that one, It was like... I think I don't know if I told you the story. It was Tinderbox in the West End, and I was walking out, and this guy held the door open for me. It was Billy Stark. And I just became, it's the same. Peter Grant, Billy Stark, the whole team. It's like absolute legends. And it is a shame that he wasn't there, because he was there through thick and thin. And all those barren years. But a little bit of a story actually about Peter Grant. Years ago, my late father-in-law was a big West Ham fan, Harry Selwood, and they were coming back from New Zealand for a visit, and there was only sort of 2 games they could go and see West Ham. I was going to go and take to a West Ham game, and the both were sold out. And it turned out that a mate of mine knew Peter Grant, or a mate of mine's mum knew Peter Grant. So I took a chance and phoned up West Ham and says, "Look, I know it's sold out, but this is the story. He's 78. He's come across from New Zealand. He's not seen West Ham since the 70s or whatever." I says, "Oh, bit of a tenuous thing, but my friend's mum knows Peter, blah blah." And he must have been in the background, because I hear the girl and she's like, blah blah blah. So anyway, Peter Grant sorted out 2 tickets for us, right behind Alan Pardew. And it was like, what a guy, honestly, what a guy. So whenever Peter Grant, he was on the commentary for Celtic TV the other day, at half time, and I was saying to my wife, and she's walked past, that's the guy that sorted the tickets out for your dad and I. So Peter Grant,
definitely. And by the way, I don't know how he does it, but he at his age looks brilliant. He looks absolutely brilliant. He's not got a pound hanging the wrong way. He's still got his hair. He's looking great. Granty, looking forward to seeing him tomorrow. Brown Warrior, Eddie isn't the number 9 we need. Edouard, no question at all, says Barry McCluskey. There's one in the Eddie camp. Ida says Stevie 5G, not Eddie the Ego. And John Curie, never forgiven Eddie for downing tools. There seems to be a lot of feeling around Edouard. How would you feel, though, if, there was a wee video on the Celtic socials and there's some guy who walks into a record shop in Glasgow and then finds the LP vinyl version of Second Coming, he turns around with that big smile and it's odds on Edouard? You're not telling me you would be unhappy with that, Ian. Of course you wouldn't. Everybody would be joyous if we signed odds on Edouard, if we found a way to do it. Of course we would. We'd love it. That
would be great. That could have, I'm just picturing that scenario. Do you remember A Question of Sport? And he used to be the mystery guest.
That's right.
Right, and then when they unveiled them, you just imagine that, right? So French Eddie's.
I forgot about that. I watched that religiously every week, and I completely forgot about that. Aye, that's the sketch I've got in my head. Aye, and he turns around, and there he is. It's on St. Edouard.
Flashing that smile.
Brilliant. Yeah, there's so many 1980s references when we're on. I think that says it all. Thanks, everybody. Put up with them. It's just their point of reference, right? I mean, listen, right? If you look at who tunes into a Celtic State of Mind, and you get all the analytics on YouTube, there's loads of people our age group anyway, Ian, so everybody will get the references. French Eddie said Stephen Kennedy has had his time with us, time to move on. And Donny Tiny Hands is back in to say, is it time to move on from Ida and pursue other options? As I say, Donny, I think that I find it weird that I'm calling you Donny, because I don't know if that's your name. Tiny Hands certainly is not your surname. But I don't think that Brendan Rodgers looked panicked whatsoever. And the thing is, with that, Ian, when he is annoyed, he uses the press conferences as a platform. We've seen him doing it in the past. He seems really calm. He seems as though he's pretty satisfied at the way things are going at the moment. Now, it's, to use a cliche, it is all parts of a jigsaw, right? And if you start from the back, we had to start with the goalie situation. Joe Hart leaving the club left a massive, massive gaping hole in the Celtic side. Nobody at the football club could step into that berth. Scott Bain is perennially an unused substitute. They'll probably keep him at the football club to be the third choice. Although I wouldn't do that. I would promote one of the younger guys and I'd move Bain on. It looks as though Siegrist is leaving as well. He's going to join up with Neil Lennon. That's going to be announced pretty soon. So we've sorted out the goalkeeper situation. We brought in Schmeichel. I think that's a sensational bit of business, bringing in Kasper Schmeichel. And he's got an understudy in Sinisalo who for 2 years will get games here and there, but he'll be learning every single day on the training pitch. And by the time that Schmeichel's contract is up, hopefully we'll have a ready-made replacement. How often can we say that, Ian? Because we don't have that situation at left back. I was really, really impressed with the two fullbacks, but it's the first time I've seen them playing. I don't tune into Admira Wacker games that often to have a look at Anderson, right? I would, if I could. And at left back, Donovan, for me, was one of the most impressive players on the park. But, I don't think in terms of their development, the stage where they step into the Celtic team, Fair play to Anderson for going out and getting a year under his belt. But we should always have that succession planning every single area of the football park, where you do have that younger guy with a bit of experience. If called upon, he can go in, he can slot in, he knows the game plan, he knows the style, and he's not going to be out. He's not going to be out of touch. He's not going to be out of place in that football team. We're not very good at that, are we?
No, I mean, look at a good comparison is obviously Kieran Tierney, and he was blooded in fairly young age, wasn't he? So I think the problem with Celtic, we've got to win every game. And it's very difficult, and you don't want to be counterproductive and put the young players in, and it sort of they end up getting killed. With the odd bad game or sort of half a game or whatever it might be. But you would hope that the standard of the youth player should be that they can handle that and they can come in and for a certain percentage of games during the season they come in so you would think a season to sort of blood in playing that say 10, 15 games, maybe not full games or whatever, but then for the following season you would hope that they're ready to sort of come in and have a bit more of a say. That's kind of how it worked with Tierney, wasn't it? It was what season was it now? Was it 2000? I can't remember what year it was now, but it was it was a good way to do it. But obviously he was a standout. So yeah.
The thing with Tierney, I think, and by the way, I'll give credit where credit's due. I think we got a wee bit lucky with Kieran Tierney. But then what became pretty clear is that he was almost a generational talent for Celtic. And as a Celtic supporter, unfortunately, we are conditioned to think when you see a player progressing either through the system or someone that would manage to identify, you unfortunately start to think and tend to think the better they get, the more chance of them leaving the football club. And it's a horrible situation to be in. 2014-15 is where he got a couple of games near the end of the season. And then, of course, I seem to remember him playing in Ronnie Dyler's last game. Then he really came into his own. He improved immeasurably, I think, under Brendan Rodgers. And then when he left the football club, there was an air of resignation that it was going to happen. I think we got great money for him, but is it safe to say it's not really worked out for him at Arsenal? He's played over 100 games, 125 games or so, but there's been injury problems. We've seen that again with Scotland, and he's had to go to Spain to get some game time. Why are we talking about Eddie? Why are we talking about Tierney? Because the players who are available, there are players who are available, and they have a link to Celtic. They've got a link to Brendan Rodgers, so I think it's a viable discussion point. In terms of Kieran Tierney, we ran a couple of shows actually where we dedicated the entire hour talking about should we, shouldn't we. Celtic, I can confirm, were 100% interested in signing Kieran Tierney. And when he's gone to the Euros, there were two clubs interested, Celtic and Bournemouth. And the asking price at that stage, Arsenal were willing to take 10 million quid. Now, at that point, Ian, right, you're thinking to yourself, if Celtic are able to find a way to match the wages, and the wages would have been vast, that Bournemouth were offering them, you're asking yourself, what's the decision that Kieran's going to make at that point? Previously, he has said that he only wants to come to Celtic, or he doesn't want to come to Celtic as a washed-up player. I think we've seen that in the past where, that it's a bucket list thing. They're out at grass, but they want to wear the hoops. He doesn't want that to happen. But genuinely, Celtic were in the race to sign Kieran Tierney until he got injured. And what I'm going to say, I don't know if this is in defence of the way we've gone about our business, because I'm as frustrated as everybody else. I do believe that Scott McKenna and Kieran Tierney were the two first signings that Celtic had lined up. McKenna demanded too high wages. Tierney got injured at the Euros. Then we were going to sort out the goalie problem, which we've sorted out. And in the interim period, Bernardo and Ida probably in the works throughout that whole process, and they will get announced. If and when that happens, if you had those six players in, you could argue the toss about who wanted McKenna, who wanted Kieran Tierney. I think a lot of us would have been pretty happy with that business if we were to do that in the next week or two before the Kilmarnock game. But it's not an exact science. People get injured. People make demands because they've got a free transfer in and they want to, £3.5 million transfer fee that you're saving. They want to put that into their wages. They're already on 38, 39 grand at Nottingham Forest. We're not paying that for Scott McKenna. So on the one hand, I get the patience. But on the other hand, we shouldn't only have the one option. So that goes back to the point that was made earlier. We should have a list of centre-half options, a list of left-back options. And that's where the frustration comes in. I'm not ready to kick the cat yet and slam doors and all that, Ian, but maybe if we're sitting here in the same scenario next week, I will be. What are you thinking about the Man City game? It's going to be on tomorrow night. It's another late-stroke-early one. We'll be covering the game. I think Pep has alluded to the fact that it's going to be kind of fringe players that Man City play, which is fair enough. Maybe short-changing their own American fans. I don't know how they would feel about that. How are you feeling? It's going to be more of a challenge, isn't it, than DC United or anybody else we've played so far?
Of course it is. Of course it is. But I think I said it in the last pod. I'm not too concerned. I think pre-season games, they are what they are. They're just a chance for us to get fitness, and I suppose compare ourselves to sort of a higher class of player. Even if it's fringe men, they're still, I think, probably the most of them would get into our first team quite easily. So yeah, I don't think it really matters too much. It's as I say, I would like to have seen the full complement of pre-season signings in, so we could have had a look at them as well against these better class of players. But that's sadly not the case. But I'll watch it with interest, as I watch all games that I can with Celtic, and hopefully it's a decent game. I'm
going to bring this up because we did talk about Question of Sport. My era of Question of Sport was Bill Beaumont and Emlyn Hughes. I stopped watching it eventually. I'm not sure why. Here we go. Undercover Brother 67. Larson was Bob Marley on Question of Sport. I didn't see that one. Did that happen? Was Larson Bob Marley? I wouldn't put it past him. I would not put that past Henrik Larsson. There's some great pictures of him with a guitar and all the rest of it. And we all know that Bob Marley was a Celtic fan, as was his son, as is his son, Rohan. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm going to have to search for that now on the old archives to see if I can find Henrik Larsson as Bob Marley. Here we go. Rich Harrison, PJD, you've hinted our recruitment would be changing for the better. Has your source sold you a crock? All signs point to the status quo. Well, it's changed. Has it changed for the better, I think, is the question. It's changed in that previously we had a head of recruitment who was Mark Lowell, and we brought in a number of players who weren't good enough. And so Mark Lowell, as far as we're aware and advised, resigned and looked for opportunities elsewhere. So, as I've said in the past, and I'm not great at pronouncing the head of scouting's name, Jay Lefebvre is working closely with Brendan Rodgers and Michael Nicholson. And that is your recruitment team right now. And that isn't good enough, right? So I think we're in a transition period, Rich, to be honest with you. And until we have a head of recruitment, it's not going to be good enough. And the problem that we've got at the moment is when one of the trio of staff members who are looking to bring in possibly 8 players in a transfer window, as well as getting rid of the same amount or more, is the actual first team manager. That concerns me a great deal, Ian, because if you're the football manager, it's not like in the old days where football managers ran the club. You'd think of Jock Stein, Don Revie, Brian Clough, Bill Shankly. I mean, effectively, I've heard stories of people going to buy tickets and there was a wee hatch, and sometimes when the hatch opened, it was Jock Stein, who was in the ticket office, sitting there maybe having a cup of tea with whoever it was sorting out the tickets, the Pres, Kennedy. And the thing with this is, those days are gone now. We should not have a football manager who's actually, so intrinsically involved. Yeah. He should have the rubber stamp. He should be at the front and the end of the process. Ian, he should be the guy identifying where we need to strengthen. He should be the guy rubber stamping the players at the end of the process. At the moment, he is the process. Him and 2 other guys. That's shambolic. So no, I'm not happy with the process. And I don't think I've been sold a turkey. I think we're in that transition. How many transfer windows will Brendan Rodgers put up with the status quo? I think that is the more concerning question, Ian.
I think, yeah. Look, if we talk about succession planning, right, and, Brendan should have a say in that structure, and we should, get into his brain and transplant his knowledge and bring that structure from, if he's not had it at Celtic and wherever he's been, he must have had it at Liverpool. He's got the knowledge base of how that should look. Obviously, when he leaves, he'll probably take certain personnel with him, but at least the structure would remain. So therefore, we just have to change the people that leave. Should they leave with Brendan? But that structure should be set up and set in place by Brendan, I believe. So therefore, then he's got the confidence in the system working next season, the season after, or for however long he stays.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking through. Obviously, we start our bulletin every single day at 12:30, and I'm looking through any kind of updated news, and I'm refreshing that as the 1 hour show progresses, just to see if anything happens during it that we don't see on the comment section. And nothing has been reported over the last hour. And we will be obviously picking up on this tomorrow. We'll be looking ahead to the Manchester City game. And obviously later in the week, we'll be looking at the Chelsea game. But by the time Ian and I come together again on the show next week, you would be hoping at that stage that a couple of bodies at least are in the building. And even then, it's not enough, because you start looking at things like Lord Flashheart, who states that we still badly need a quality left back and centre back. And absolutely. And that's where, by the way, we'll all disagree and agree and all the rest of it. We'll have differing opinions about the two names that I've mentioned today. But those two guys were targets for Celtic. And would they have improved the squad? Let us know in the comment section. Would Kieran Tierney pre-injury have improved the squad? Would Scott McKenna have been an upgrade on Liam Scales? Let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are on that. Your maw, Edouard, walks into the starting 11. Let's not kid ourselves. Does he? Does he for you right now? I'm going to give you my starting 11, right? I mentioned it the other day. Right now, there's maybe, I would say, one position that's up for debate, but let me know what you think, right? Schmeichel's in goals. Right back's Alistair Johnson. Left back is Greg Taylor. Your two centre-halves, as we sit here right now, are Liam Scales and Cameron Carter-Vickers. Your midfield is the strongest part of your team. It's Matt O'Reilly, it's Callum McGregor and Rio Atati. And then your front three, and this is the bit where I'm bringing it up because your Moss says Edouard would step right in there. Up top is Kyogo, on the left is Maeda. And I've put Kuhn on the right. And the reason I put him on the right is he's the guy for me that I think is going to improve this season. I think we're going to see a player in Kuhn. Based on form, it's Forrest, because Forrest ended last season brilliantly. He was excellent the other night, actually, I would say, when he came on. But I'm going to say Kuhn in terms of the longer term for this season. There's my starting 11. Does Edouard get into that for you, Ian?
No, he doesn't. I think I agree with you on that one. And I think with James Forrest, I think you're correct on form, but I think he seems to be better as an impact player coming off the bench rather than starting games. He can turn a game for us. But I think that's our strongest lineup, and I do think Kuhn. He's got stuff to prove, to obviously to the fans, but also to himself. And he looks quite a focused individual. He looks like he's got a bit of guile about him. So hopefully, it's he's gonna really turn it on. Palmer, has got. He seemed to be finally getting it as well towards the end of last season. So I've got a bit sort of higher expectations for Palmer as well. But I concur with that lineup, and I think Kuhn's got more to offer.
Kuhn's my wild card for this season. The thing with Palmer, listen, in terms of writing off Celtic players, it's not that I don't do it. I'm loath to do it. I mean, I wrote off Haksabanovic. I've written off Bernabe. I've written off Siegrist. And there's others in the squad who I would write off and move on. Palmer, for me, has got the minerals. He's got it. Is that enough to be a consistent performer for Celtic? No, it's not. You've got to have the mentality. I don't have an issue with a player being flash. I have no issue with a player being flash. I know that in the modern day, your Instagram and your reels and all that kind of stuff, part and parcel with the game. I'd rather it wasn't, but it is. I mean, we've had to jump into the world of Instagram and dip our toes into the world of TikTok. Us old mid-40-somethings at Acsom have had to do that. So I get that players have to do it. I don't have an issue with them being flash. But if you're going to be flash, you've got to back it up. You know what I mean? We had Scottish greats doing keepy-uppies. You don't sit in a ball unless you can back it up by scoring the winning goal. So the thing with Palmer is I think he's got a lot to prove. I think Kuhn, slowly but surely, will progress into a first pick. Peter Grant pulling back Joe Miller from the Mount Florida end saved him from a bottle of his dome. Scottish Cup final. Listen, Keith Robertson, we spoke to Joe Miller about that just the other week on This Is Acsom, and wee Joe says that he was just basically overcome with emotion to the point where he's blown kisses to the Rangers fans, Ian, you'll remember. A beautiful, sunny day. He's just latched on to a Gary Stevens pass back, slotted it away, and he's blown kisses to the Rangers fans. But if you remember back, right, rewind a couple of years before that, it was the previous season, 1987. Celtic are playing Rangers at Ibrox. It's McAvenny's first Celtic appearance against Rangers. He had made his debut against Hibs a few weeks before. And it was a powder keg fixture. And Celtic took the lead. Did they take the lead, or was it the second goal? Peter Grant, to this day, still claims it. It was put down as a Terry Butcher own goal. And Peter Grant got down on his knees and he praised the Lord and blessed himself, right? Now, what then ensued in that game, I'm still gutted that we threw away a 2-goal lead. It was 2 each, and you had a number of footballers for the first time appearing at court for an incident on the park involving Frank McAvenny, Terry Butcher, Graham Roberts and Chris Woods. And a couple of them were guilty. McAvenny was not guilty. Roberts was not proven, right? And so it was a huge, massive spectacle. And the press at the time, if you go back on the old archives, Ian, the press at the time were blaming Granty for inciting it, for getting down on his knees and blessing himself. Seriously, double-page spreads. Granty should be going to court, what, for blessing himself? Are you insane, right? So there's another story, an EastEnders story that I think we've told before. But anyway, Joe Miller was going to do the same after he scored against Rangers in the Scottish Cup final. It was a treble buster. He was going to do the same. And who was it that stopped him from doing it? Peter Grant, because he knew what the fallout was going to be. Ian. So great times. We're going to be speaking to Peter Grant tomorrow. I will ask him about that. I'll also ask him about the god-awful Celtic record from the centenary season, the Celtic rap. Yeah. And I'll also ask him about Paul McStay's alter ego when he had a few red wines and he became Philippe from Bordeaux. Anything else you want me to ask him, Ian?
I'll have to have a think. Do thank him for those West Ham tickets, so if you get a chance. He won't remember, obviously. I did pay for them, but it was a sellout. But yeah, I'd love to sort of thank him in person actually one day. I'll buy him a pint. But I'll think I'll message you if I think of anything.
Definitely. Do that. Any other questions? Anything else you want us to cover? Let us know in the comment section as well. We are interviewing Peter Grant tomorrow at Barras Art Design. Will McMillan, is there actually any evidence we are chasing either? Well, we've made a bid. And he does come out and said he wants to play for Celtic. And is it a stalemate? Probably not. There's loads of stuff happening behind the scenes that we won't hear about until it appears on the surface. Magnet 67, mostly fringe and youth if Pep's presser was much to go by. We're talking, of course, about the Manchester City's lineup. I don't know if Grealish and McGregor have ever played against each other since they were at Notts County together. Probably not. I don't think we've played Man City, but Joe Hart was playing in goals for Man City. It was a friendly. I'd need to check the timelines on that. But Grealish would never have been at Man City back then anyway. So no, I don't think they've ever faced each other. Wonder what kind of team Man City will play against us. A very strong one regardless, Lord, I think. Gordon, Coney, afternoon, Acsom. I'm not holding out much hope of too much quality coming in that will improve our squad, as our board unfortunately still hold Rangers as a benchmark. Ian, final point of the day. I mean, I've seen so many fans saying it. It's hard sometimes to argue with that when you look at the lack of action. I do sometimes get a sense that, we're playing a game when it comes to progression. And, we think to ourselves, we've got enough to win the Scottish League. Probably, but let's not make it as tight as last season. Let's actually just look after ourselves here. I mean, at the end of the day, people say to you about the Scottish League being weak if Celtic win it by 20 or 30 points. Well, if we're 20 or 30 points worse off, Ian, then when we go into Europe, we're not as good. So why would we care? Surely it should all be about Celtic's interests. I'm going to be selfish here, right? And everybody else can catch up and everybody else can benefit from the broadcasting deals, the sponsorship deals and the attendance and the spend every single time Celtic go to their stadium. You can all benefit from that because what I've seen in the past is football clubs benefit financially and do nothing with it. They're basket cases. These football clubs like Hibs, Hearts, Dundee United, Aberdeen, what have they done? What they've done in the last decade, what they've done in the last 20 years, no much. So I think that they need to keep their own house in order, and Celtic should do the same. And we should never do just enough to win the league and just enough to stay ahead of Rangers.
That's what we do. And I think, when we have financial professionals who are sort of running the ship, it's the same in any walk of life. Whenever any business I've been in, when sort of, the adage about the bean counters, if there's a bean counter in charge, it's always the way it is. It's always risk averse, and it's always the sort of the balance sheet's always all important, which it is, of course it is. And it was in that interview with Desmond, he said it was the Micawber, from the Charles Dickens movie or book, and it's that's make sure your balance sheet is right, and just slightly in the black. So that's why we're so risk averse. And the fact that Rangers are knowing that we know they're not doing too well financially, I think that again is just plays into the board's hands, that we don't actually let's just put the brakes on, boys. That bad news is good news for us.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I would take a flamethrower to it, Ian.
Me too.
If somebody turns up to the fight with a spud gun, take a bazooka to it. Celtic just need to look after ourselves. And the shambolic nature of our nearest challengers, which is basically playing out in front of us.
Yeah.
For me, do not hold back. Do not put on the brakes. Go out there and sign the quality that the quality manager wants, and push on and actually make an impression and make progress in the Champions League next season. Thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. Ian Conroy has stayed up until the early hours in the morning from New Zealand to talk about Celtic for an hour. If you want to come along and join us on a live stage, we will be in Glasgow on Friday with Joe Ledley. We'll be in Grangemouth on Saturday with Joe Ledley and Charlie Mulgrew. Tickets, very few tickets, are available underneath this video. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Let us know in the comment section. Give us a thumbs up on the video if you enjoy what we do, and also subscribe. Hit the notifications bell, and every single Friday night you will get This Is Acsom on your feed with someone who has a Celtic state of mind. They could have played for Celtic. They might not have played for Celtic. They've got a Celtic state of mind. They'll be on the show. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved, and thank you to Ian Conroy for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.